on Bless Radio, and this is a spiritual discussion program. And I'm going to get Brother Gregory online now. 1 second. So while we are waiting for him to come online, as you know, the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the grail message. Let me just see if he's there. Just calling Gregory.
Hello?
Oh, greetings, Gregory. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, welcome to the show. I'm just beginning, actually. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program, just after 6 o'clock. Thanks to Sister Marino for her show just before us. The aim of our show, the spiritual discussion program, is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And the topic for discussion tonight is ideal human beings. You can join in with our discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. Gregory, here in London, it's muggy, quite warm, but really quite muggy, and it's, in Overcast at the moment. It's been quite a sweaty day, I will say, for me at least. Brother Gregory, tell us where you are and how is the weather where you are?
Very similar to London, what we have in Brussels.
Ah, Brussels, okay, very good. Okay, I will begin with, before we start the topic discussion, what is the Grail message? The Grail message in the light of truth by Abrushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover, through the intuitive perception, if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abrushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author, Abushin. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, the topic to remind you tonight is ideal human beings, and you can join in the discussion or give your comments or questions on this number, this UK number, which is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. Gregory, I was looking up in the dictionary idealism, because when you think of ideal human beings, you think of idealism as a sort of a concept, and this is what I came. It's a very short definition, but I'll read that now if I can find it. Yes, idealism: the unrealistic belief in or pursuit of perfection. And it's got actually 2 definitions here, so I'm going to read the first one here again. The unrealistic belief in or pursuit of perfection. And the second one, it says in philosophy, any of various systems of thought in which the objects of knowledge are held to be in some way dependent on the activity of the mind. So I'm going to focus on the first one, the unrealistic belief in or pursuit of perfection. So, I mean, when I think of the word idealism myself, I also think, oh, it's something unrealistic. And here they're talking about unrealistic belief. And then also then it says pursuit of, well, I don't know if it's unrealistic pursuit of perfection or just the word pursuit of perfection. Gregory, what that definition, does it sound like true somehow that this is idealism is something unrealistic belief, it says, or pursuit of perfection? So is it unrealistic to be idealistic?
Well, both point very clearly to the pursuit of perfection. So on that basis, one is able to discuss what idealism, which is more like a peak of activity or a state of activity where all the senses or all the perceptions are brought into it, and but it cannot exceed that. So that's the highest state. One way to say is the ideal state, and therefore we would say it's perfect. I mean, it is complete. So most probably it's, from dictionary definitions, is of the pursuit towards perfection.
And I mean, the topic tonight is ideal human beings. And here I'm just looking at idealism just for the moment. So is it really possible for human beings to become ideal? Maybe that's what I want to or achieve perfection, because that is what we are saying. Idealism is pursuit of perfection. So is it possible for human beings to become perfect? It's in this, and even maybe we should break it up. We live on the earth, and we know we are spiritual beings. So maybe in the spiritual, you think you can achieve perfection, but on the earth, it doesn't seem the world isn't perfect, it appears, you know. You can't seem to get perfection on the earth. So let's look at that. Let's break it down. Can human beings become ideal? And let's break it into on the earth and also then spiritual, let's say in the spiritual.
Of course, human beings can become ideal even while still here on earth.
Okay.
one should understand that events here on, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, activities on Earth are only a part of the whole reality. And as long as one uses the tools which are available for the real inner man, which tools are basically the physical body or the intellect, as long as one uses these tools to the utmost state, it therefore means one cannot go beyond the utmost state in accordance with the laws that brought that human spirit or that human being into creation. There are categories, or there are stratas. Here on earth, there is the best you can do, and that best which is possible here on earth in accordance with the limitations of the physical body, that is the utmost, and that's the ideal. You cannot exceed that because the physical body has its own limitations. However, it is what makes use of the physical body in order to experience. That is what really counts. It takes away that experience for its maturity, which maturity will be complete or perfect or ideal when it arrives from where it had taken off as an unconscious spirit gem, and now when it has returned back in its ideal state, in its utmost state spiritually, it now returns as a self-conscious human spirit. That is the ideal state. Of course, that state is a spiritual state. However, it is possible whilst that human spirit is on earth, it makes use of what is available for it in order to experience and therefore tend towards that ideal state.
Thank you for that, Gregory. What I noted from what you said there, basically, ideal is you could say the highest state of whatever world that we're in, whether earthly or spiritual, and in the end you said also doing your best. So of doing your best of what is available to you. So using the body, for example, doing the best from that while we're on the earth. And obviously I can see already from that, as time goes, let's say 100 years ago or 200 years ago, what a man could do then. I know I'm talking in a technological level at the moment. There's, you say, certain things a man can do now, which a man could not do maybe, as I said, 200 or 100 years ago. So I know that is a technology in a sense rather than the ability of the man, because obviously we still have all the 5 senses that we've mentioned in earlier on in the introduction, which are still there, whether 1,000 years ago or even now. That hasn't changed. So what I want to look at next is the ideal human being. Before I do that, actually, let me just explore another thing that is in the dictionary definition, the second sort of part of the definition. Just a second, I've got to access that. I'm afraid it's on my phone and it's not behaving itself here. 1 second. Yes, here we go. Yes, here we go. Right, so this is idealism, and the second definition that I found in the online dictionary, which says it's to do with described in the philosophy, you can say, any of various systems of thought in which the objects of knowledge are held to be in some way dependent on the activity of the mind. It's a bit of a complicated definition. I'm just going to say it slowly again. So this is definition of idealism in philosophy. Any of various systems of thought in which the objects of knowledge are held to be in some way dependent on the activity of the mind. So, Gregory, I don't know, were you able to follow that definition? Because it's not so obvious to follow.
Well, that definition is only trying to qualify and touch on various things, but it cannot be specific because it lacks the key point of being specific. It talks of the mind, and it hasn't explained to anybody what the mind is. And it talks about a body of thoughts. Yes, what generates the thoughts? These are discussions which can be heard at any time. But the key thing here is that, okay, we have a body of thoughts or something, or maybe a school of thoughts, and they have all sort of things. These are only qualifications, which has not talked about the essence of idealism.
Yes, so let's look at man, because we're talking about ideal human beings. And so on the earth, let's focus on the earth at the beginning right now. So ideal, and we already discussed or mentioned that being ideal is having the highest state or the ultimate state. And I'm thinking, is that obviously in our abilities? Because you know, you mentioned earlier doing your best. So every person should aim, if they want to be ideal, to be the best in whatever they're capable of, right? So whether it's a work, a job, or whether whatever skill they have, they apply it to the best of their ability. And so my question then is every human being given an equal ability or potential, or is it everyone is different? Because I know our personalities are all human being personalities are different. So our abilities also different?
The ideal is basically a goal, a state which one strives to attain. That particular goal where all one's striving comes to the peak. There is continuous improvement, but in the continuous improvement or in the continuous maturity, it means the personality, which is the inner personality, has matured. Its maturity today is better than what it was the day before. So in such a scenario, one says there is improvement towards a particular goal. Here on it, there is a limit. That limit is bounded through the limitations of the senses which we have, or to a large extent, the limitations of the intellect. Because it's through the intellect one is able to interact externally. The intellect is bounded, and therefore, here on it, there is a limit which is set. It cannot cross that limit. As long as it strives towards all that is possible to be achieved whilst here on earth, then it has achieved that which is ideal here on earth, which is only a portion, which is only a part of the inner maturity. To attain that, there is the need for the inner man to make use of its intuitive perception. These intuitive perception, these are vibrations that have arisen out of the spirit, communications with the external with the back brain, which then induces the frontal brain to take actions or carry out certain activities. If we have that communication being seamless, then the tendency to achieve that which is ideal, as far as is possible on earth, that tendency becomes, say, seamless or easier. If, however, there is a loosening, you find that it becomes very difficult to attain to that ideal whilst here on earth. Even when the ideal has been achieved here on earth, that does not suffice, because there are other spheres of human activities where the inner man or the human spirit needs to experience in order to mature and therefore, gain the necessary experience that it will use to move towards back home, the origin where it started as an unconscious spirit gem.
Thank you for that. You mentioned intuition there, and something came up in my head about fulfilling our dreams. People get inspired by something and then they want to pursue that, and then you hear things, oh, anything is possible, whatever you want to strive for, go for it. It's, no matter what age you are, no matter what how difficult it might appear, to get to that goal of the dream, you still pursue your dream. So what I want to ask you, Gregory, on that is that also, when somebody has a dream, is that something like an idealism as well, to strive for idealism? Or is that, because nowadays you hear so many things in the news, I don't know if it's this story that was in the news just now, where a 91-year-old granny, she lost her 4 children in their 40s. I can't remember exactly what reason, let's say some illnesses or whatever, but all 4 her children died in their 40s. And as a way to, I think it was cancer, something like that, I think. All of them died of cancer. And obviously she felt quite distressed about that. And she felt one way, let's say, she wanted to maybe help the charity that helped those her sons. I believe they were all sons. She decided to do a cycle ride from John O'Groats to Land's End, the longest journey from in UK. Cycle ride at the age of 91. Obviously she didn't go on her own, she had some people supporting her. She just wanted to, leave a legacy. There's, people get this a lot when some tragedy happens. Parents or close relatives want some sort of legacy to remember their children, because it feels that their life was not completed, and they feel that something has to be done to commemorate that, let's say. So I know this may not be pure idealism as a obvious in the discussion that we're having tonight, but let's say this is a dream that somebody might they receive, that when I say dream, something occurs to them that they want to achieve, do something, which they feel will make a difference in the world. So when people receive that, would you consider that to be like a sense of idealism, or some sort of something coming from that sort of angle?
Many a person have goals, which goals they wish to tend to or to achieve, or most probably to accomplish. That goal, in the process of striving to accomplish it, there is a tendency of self-improvement. So in achieving this goal, they set out certain landmarks, and they set out how they intend to achieve these particular goals. And in doing that, they tend to involve others, but at the same time, and what is most important, to improve themselves. That self-improvement, if only in drawing other people's attention to the state of so-called cancer or whatever they wish to achieve, that is a step in the right direction. But the first rule should be for each person to know himself or herself. So it is to know thyself and know the capabilities or the abilities that one has, which abilities lies in one's intuition, the seamless communication between the spirit or the back brain and the frontal brain, and make use of the warnings of the impressions that assail one at every moment. Make use of those impressions externally for self-improvement. Whatever could have caused that could be the deaths in one's family, it could be personal injury, or it could be something of joy. All this points to the same thing. There is a need for self-improvement. And in pursuing that self-improvement, you give it a different name and say, I want to leave a legacy. You can only leave a legacy of that which is good when you yourself listen to your intuition and do not ignore the warnings and the support that it grants. It's no use pointing out, oh, someone has passed on, or this or that, when you yourself do not learn or do not learn any lesson, don't take any benefit from such things, but only want to point out, oh, my children were this, oh, this happened or that happened. The first rule for the human spirit is to know itself and strive after that which is ideal, which every particular personality senses deep within. There is the sensing of a place where all is peace and harmony. That sensing has always been there. It's more like a longing, which longing many do not know the origin. It's like there is a call from deep within, like a call from home, where all that is there consciously is perfect. All that is there consciously is ideal, where there is vibrant motions, but not motions that seek to destroy the other person, but motions, activities which support the activities of others. That means where we have harmonious activities and supporting activities, the joy of one becoming the joy of another. That man has always sensed when it left its origin and was maturing in the right direction in accordance with the laws that brought it into existence. That longing has always been there. It is that that sucks it upwards. That is the ideal that one talks about in spirit, because that is the peak of maturity.
Thank you, Gregory, for giving like a comprehensive picture. What I wanted to sort of follow on from what you have said there, you know, people can only act on according to what they know about, and when you hear these news stories, like I mentioned about this 91-year-old granny who cycled in memory of her four sons who died of cancer, and obviously she is trying to do her best, and you could say striving to leave a legacy in some way, something good she wants to do. She can only act according to the knowledge that she has, and you said she probably is answering a call within her, and the call is like an unconscious call where it's a call from her home, and yet at this moment what she sees as her home is, let's say, on the earthly things, leaving something in the earthly. And so what I want to ask you, Gregory, because as I said, we hear many such stories in the public, especially in the media of today. These news spreads really quite widely, very quickly, and people want to respond and donate or whatever way, just to join in to support somebody who has suffered something and help them. And of course, the start of this, let's say, of this journey is from the person who had suffered the tragedy. So my question really is, when people do suffer, let's say, a loss or heartache, and they want to do something, they feel they want to do something to commemorate or sort of just to, I don't know, to feel at ease and at peace maybe. How can they, when they don't know about the spiritual aspect of life, is that, let me say, is that just the experience they just need to experience for the moment as they're doing now, and then at one point, as they keep striving, they will come to know the spiritual aspect of life? Or can they know it earlier than that, because people do suffer tragedy, but it doesn't make them think about, let's say, oh, life after death, maybe there's something, there are natural laws or something happening. You don't hear that in the news, people talking, this happened to my son, maybe something was behind it, deeper than what, then there's the physical cause of it. They can't seem to look anything deeper. So would you say, is that the level of the human being that that's all they're able to handle? Or is it possible for every human being to, let's say, to get to the deeper understanding of life?
In the first case, one should know that people, young or old, are at different stages of spiritual maturity. There are many who are intellectually very matured, but spiritually are like children. And there are others who, seen from the outside, are not so much intellectually superb, but are spiritually very much alert. One thing should become clear. There are two poles here on earth. The birth of the personality, which is the entry into an earth life, and then the death, which in that scenario, where the physical body is dropped, and that which made use of the physical body journeys away from it. There is no human being, or there is no personality who does not reflect about these things, because it knows it was born. It knows it's not going to be here forever. So the time will come before too long, and that personality will have to, in quotes, die. That means gives us the physical body. Majority only reflect on birth until death. Only a few try to reflect what it was before an incarnation, which is birth, and what lies beyond the transformation That means the state where you now give up the physical body. Is there any entity that has been making use of the physical body? These questions are not asked. And therein lies the problems. For we now know, through the work in the light of truth, that the inner core of man is of spirit. That it is the spirit that makes use of the physical body. And at birth, the spirit takes the physical body and starts as a child, and will have to go through a period where he understands the functionality and learns to control the physical body until maturity. And depending on how he or she has been brought up, is able to move in such a way such that impressions from the inner person are well understood by the frontal brain. And in such a state, you will find such a person being on the alert, because deep within is already sensing that it is not the physical body alone that makes up the human being. There it now knows along the line that the inner man, that there is something that activates, and that something is alive, and that the physical body is only dependent on that particular activity. There are many who are able to sense this, and there are also many who do not give it a further thought, but sweep it aside. Now, the maturity of the person depends on how that personality is able to understand that communication between the inner man and the intellect. In such a case, you find that he's on the alert. And for those who do not make use of that opportunity whilst here, then they fall short, because it is not the intellectual development that counts as such. That intellectual development is only here for the earth. It is the spiritual development that counts. And therefore, when you have a scenario such as the one you spoke of the lady who wants to go cycling, that is only an interpretation of her sensing. She could do something else. That interpretation sometimes may be overtly intellectual. There are some who may not do that. They decide just to plant a tree for their children. But there is the need to move away from being narrow in one's interpretation. That is why we have the discussions we do have on this, every Tuesday. There is the need to seek further, such that our activities are permeated by the movement of the Spirit. Because that is the one that counts, such that our interpretation of events will be such that we benefit spiritually, not only intellectually. It is true that with such that you mentioned, many people are brought to their knowledge or their awareness of cancer. But there are many other ways of looking at it. To have one interpretation and stop there is not sufficient. The inner person must be alive, must strive to understand what life is all about, and that what meets the eye physically is only a fraction of it. As long as it struggles and it seeks vigorously, spiritually, then the promise is that it will find that which it seeks. And in finding that, it will expand its knowledge, it will now make use of that knowledge, and it will mature. That is the goal. That is the ideal which the human spirit needs to strive for.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for that extensive answer. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. This is the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. And as Gregory mentioned, we encourage you to pick up the Grail message and examine it. And you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. If you want to get a copy of the Grail message or you want to get more information, I'll just spell it out. It is www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com, grailmessage.com. The topic we're discussing tonight is ideal human beings, and you can join in the discussion. If you're in UK, you can contact us on this number, which is 079 444 31366. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, we've talked a lot about what is idealism, striving for the ideal, and you could say pursuit of perfection or striving for perfection. Now, we know that on this earth, there's all variety of human beings, and let me look at, let's say, a couple of types. Let's say some of them are suffering. Let's start with this one. They have an addiction, let's say, with gambling, and which makes them difficult to give up that addiction, that particular addiction to gambling, or let's say drugs. Is, I know they're a bit different, but it's an addiction. Can such people achieve to become an ideal human being? I mean, and I'm talking about people who actually do want to give up that bad habit, or that, but it's very hard. So can such people who have, you could call it I don't want to use the word handicap because it's addiction really. That's the only word we can apply. Is it possible, or is it really a goal too far for them to strive for that?
What the spirit seeks for or seeks after, that it will find. If one is bent on achieving a particular goal and in humility puts certain tasks in place on how to achieve it, then gradually, before too long, it will arrive at that point it wishes to be in order to fulfill that which it needs to. So when the scenario you just mentioned, when you look at it very carefully, it is only indolence that prevents, if one doesn't call it indolence, one will call it love of ease. Many a time when you want to achieve something, if externally people put obstacles on the way, you will find a way around those obstacles. If you know that achieving that particular goal will bring you immense benefits. Or, let us put it very clearly, if it is some earthly goal you wish to achieve, and you know if you achieve it, it will bring you lots of money in a legal way, then no matter what obstacles you have on your path, you will find a way of circumventing that obstacle. You will not be distracted. The same thing is required for one to achieve also spiritually. So having obstacles or distractions should not stop one who wishes for that which is ideal or who is striving for the ideal. In actual fact, it will make use of the obstacles to learn the necessary lesson on how to move forward. If, however, he or she is very indolent, what then happens is that they now find the smallest excuse to say, I have a longing, I wish to be ideal, but I cannot go there because of these obstacles. Those obstacles will be, oh, I cannot overcome my addiction. Oh, I cannot do this, or I cannot do that. So, addiction or no addiction, those ones are just diversions. As long as the human spirit is determined to achieve a particular goal in simplicity, in humility, it will achieve it.
Thank you so much for that, Gregory. And I've got another question, looking at another angle of this point, you could say. Well, it's not the same point, it's just for idealism, basically. So if, again, human beings who are suffering, let's say, mental illness or other serious illnesses, is that also a hindrance to become an ideal human being? Because they cannot function, you know, whether it's a disability or it's mental ability, you know, mental illness only, I think that's the only word I can really use. If there's some restriction because of that, can such a person also become an ideal human being?
One only needs to point out the likes of musicians who are blind, and yet some of them are deaf, and yet they compose music and they play good music. So we won't say because of that inhibition which they had, they are unable to do things. If one is not too restricted physically, which is brought about through a particular condition, and one longs for and strives for to achieve a particular goal, then along the line, conditions will present themselves where he or she can accomplish that which it needs to do. A typical example is that of Steve Wonder. He is blind, but he still played music. There are others who played the classics. They were deaf, yet they still composed. So excuses will not, basically, sometimes it's only a result of indolence. Always finding excuses in order not to achieve anything. But as long as one strives, to strive doesn't mean to sit down and keep thinking about something. To strive is to first move deep within. Let one's intuition take over. And then you'll be surprised how one way or the other, that which you seek earnestly will come your path.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I did a bit of research on, let's say, qualities to be like an ideal human being. And one of the websites I visited, there was this saying, which is from Audrey Hepburn, who's a famous actress. I think it's from the 50s, if I'm right. So this is what she said: I decided very early on just to accept life unconditionally. I never expected it to do anything special for me, yet I seem to accomplish far more than I had ever hoped. Most of the time, it just happened to me without my ever seeking it. I mean, I'm quite, how can I say, amazed, well, surprised actually is probably the right word, and impressed how this could be, because I'm sure maybe she's being a bit humble here, not really declaring her that, you know, it is due to her ability that she got where she got to. And but maybe also it was a bit surprising. It was more than what she hoped, she said. So I'll just read what she said again. I decided very early on just to accept life unconditionally. I never expected it to do anything special for me, yet I seem to accomplish far more than I'd ever hoped. Most of the time it just happened to me without my ever seeking it. So Gregory, could you explain that this can happen like this, that someone can, let's say, become so successful almost without trying? I mean, maybe I'm not following what she says properly.
Well, it is. It has to be understandable that the decisions which we make now, the consequences of those decisions, some of them are immediate. Some takes quite some time. The consequences or the returns of those decisions. So you'll find that the returns of those decisions may take 1 year, some may take 2 years, some may take 1 earth life, or some other several earth lives, or depending on how we're moving. There are cases where the decisions which had been made by the Spirit, we are only experiencing the consequences at a particular period, and we do not seem to intellectually make so much effort, and yet we find that things come our path. Such is what she herself was describing. She didn't need to struggle so much. She wasn't expecting much, but yet she was able to accomplish much. These things didn't start in one earth life. Most of the time, there is so much behind us. We have made decisions in the past, not only intellectual decisions, but also spiritual decisions at various levels and at different times in different realms. When the returns then come back, they meet us at a particular place, and these returns either push us down or elevate us. In that case, we see that we haven't made consciously, or we have forgotten intellectually. Of course, the intellect will not remember because it was not there when these decisions were made at a different realm. The radiations which now return the consequences of our decisions either elevate us or push us down. And we now say, but we didn't make any decision. That is not true. The thing is that we cannot remember when such a decision was made intellectually. So that is the state of affairs. Of course, there's also intellectual decision which ties you here to the earth. There are so many other decisions which have been made in the past. The sum total of these decisions of the past, what has happened in the past, and what is happening in the present, help to form our future, such that in due course we walk through what we ourselves have put in place So all she needed to do was to reflect a bit and know that the man or the inner man or the inner woman is what is alive, and that the physical body is only animated for some time. So when we have the returns of our past activities, they can also, those returns can elevate us, or if they have been bad, can also depress us, or they can also protect us. But all these also depend on our inner state at any particular time. What one will suggest to have a precise answer, solution to that scenario is to examine the work in the light of truth, where everything that the human spirit needs is provided.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I want to quote something again from this research that I've been doing. This one is basically was looking at 10 qualities every human being should have. And one, maybe I will not go into every single one because it's a bit too long to go through all of them. But this number one quality that's mentioned is, well, let me, before I go into that number one, they said there are certain qualities each and every human being should have. This is from this website, which is called Purpose Fairy. So purposefairy.com. That's the name of the website. So the 10 qualities every human being should have, and it says qualities that have the power to help each and every one of us to connect with our own selves and the world around us at a deeper level, crafting better lives for ourselves and those around us, and making a world a happier and a lot brighter place to be in. And these qualities are, and first one it gives is faith. Faith in yourself that you are, faith in yourself and all that you are. Faith in your abilities, faith in life, and faith in the innate intelligence that created us all. And there's a quote here from Matthew chapter 17, verse 20. He replied, "Because you have so little faith, truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." That's Matthew chapter 17, verse 20. So Gregory, the one quality there is mentioned here is faith. And so does that mean, yes, we need to have a faith? In this case, faith in us, faith in our ability, and faith in the Creator, intelligence, it says here, that created us. And then anything is possible, according to Matthew, this quote from the Matthew. So
in the first case, when faith is mentioned, faith is what one may refer to as belief. Faith is only a first step. Faith itself must be examined very thoroughly and rigorously to ensure one has the right faith. So it's not a matter of faith, but a matter of the right faith. The right faith is that which has been examined rigorously in accordance with the laws through which man has come into existence. Those laws in accordance through which man has come into existence are not arbitrary. So one cannot just say, "Oh, I have faith," and you see a mountain which has been put there by nature, and you ask the mountain, "Shift," and it shifts. The right faith will help one to know the structures of creation, the structures which have been put in place that enables birth on earth, that enables the earth to function. The structures which underline everything, the substantiality which underlines everything. Only when one has arrived at that particular state will one talk about faith, the right faith. So one cannot say that if you have the right faith, you will ask the mountain itself to move, and it will move. Did Matthew himself have the right faith that he wrote such that a mountain should move and it will move? Of course, there are many things that one can do if one has the right faith. The first thing that man should do is not to interfere in the course that has been firmly established by the will of the Almighty. In that case, it will not expect arbitrary activities, arbitrary actions, as many human beings do expect. Therefore, a mountain cannot just be displaced because man has faith. So the first key is for each one to have the right faith in the sense that it understands the laws through which it came into existence. And in understanding these laws, some of it have been expressed in the 10 Commandments or in the Lord's Prayer. It keeps these laws. It does not violate them. Then one would say one has the right faith. And one will not act in an arbitrary way as Matthew has suggested.
Thank you for that clear answer, Gregory. I'm going to continue with the next quality of, you could say, of that a human being should have according to this research that I've done. It says courage. Courage to create the life you you deep down inside know that you deserve to live. Courage to go where most people don't dare to go. Courage to be the person you were born to be. Courage is the most important of all virtues, because without courage you can't practice any other virtue consistently. You can practice any virtue erratically, but nothing consistently without courage. That's from Maya. That's a quote of Maya Angelou. She's a famous, well, I think she's passed on now, but she's a famous author, woman author. So yes, Gregory, what about courage? Is that necessary to be an ideal human being?
Only those who strive to understand the patterns of nature or the laws of nature and also strive to use them rightly. Only those have courage. They have courage because they now understand the way creation functions. And with understanding lies the love. And in understanding, one can now step forth to ensure that one's activities are in accordance, are in harmony with the laws through which it, the human spirit, has come into creation in order to experience. As long as one lacks the understanding, whatever it does, most of the thing it does will be arbitrary. And whatever steps it takes them not out of personal conviction, but out of, maybe it is correct. Such one would not refer to as courage. Courage only comes when one has the right knowledge and has the power to apply it. Applying the right knowledge even in the midst of opposition. If one hasn't got the right knowledge, which knowledge upholds creation, how can you apply what you lack? And if you lack it, then you don't have it. You cannot have courage when you don't have understanding. Most of the decisions made in that scenario will be rash decisions. But as long as one understands the laws of life, the rules which furthers creation, one then strives to be in harmony with these rules, then with minimal physical efforts, because one has the inner right attitude, one flows with the currents. One is bold enough, which is courage, to flow with the currents, not act against the current. Of what use is it when one acts against the currents of creation and say one is courageous? So courage must be seen from a different perspective. And the first perspective, which is the key, is the right understanding of the mechanisms that keep creation alive. One has to understand what it means to be alive. That only comes through experience. And those experiences only come forth when you have the human intuition passing information to the intellect, and the intellect transforming it accordingly so as to make it earthly. Since it comes from on high, such intuitions, they are in harmony with the laws of creation. The problem has always been the problem of communication between the human intuition and the human intellect. As long as harmony doesn't reign there, then there is confusion. Many a time, one's intuition will say, move, and yet the intellect will say, no, it wants to remain, and vice versa. So, whatever has no spiritual foundation is useless, because its activities consume itself in confusion.
Thank you, Gregory. What I'm seeing from your answer is that really you must have a full context and a full picture of whatever abilities or virtue that you're applying. It has to be in a full context, understanding of a full context, and not part of the picture, because otherwise, yes, people, let's say people have courage, people have love, and they express love, but then you can apply it. Where are you going to apply it? How are you going to apply it? So it's not purely those expressing those things, those abilities. It has to be directed in a particular way. So, and you can't not, you must know where you're applying it. So So in a way, if I can just ask you this simple question, really, are good intentions sufficient to lead you to be an ideal human being? Because you know, many people are, you could say, out there, they have a good heart, you know, you can say they want to do good things, and let's say they want to do things with good intention, but is that sufficient to achieve success?
When one says good intention to achieve success, then it becomes confusing. Good intention, as long as they spring from the human intuition and the intellect pursues or strives to make these intentions earthly, practical, that process is of value. The idea is not success or not success. It's to produce something of value. You have good intentions. Are you going to fold your arms and say, I have good intentions to become a doctor, and you fold your arms for the next 100 years? For he or she who has good intentions must be courageous enough to turn those good intentions into things of value right here on earth. Then he or she will say, I have succeeded. So it is not good intentions in words, but good intention in deeds. Which deeds will be of benefit first to the person that has the good intention, and also to those of its neighbors. By neighbors, one does not mean only human beings around it. By neighbors, one is talking about what is seen and what is yet to be seen. One is also talking about the environment. These are what one refers to as neighbors.
Thank you, Gregory, for that. I think I might pick one more quality from here. Yes, let me do that. This is a quality for a good human being. So this is imagination, and it says the ability to inspire and feel inspired, the capacity to use your mind to create new worlds and discover new realms, to go where no one has ever gone before and craft things that nobody has ever crafted before. And then here's a quote from Albert Einstein, to go with this. Logic will get you from A to Z. Imagination will get you everywhere. That's a quote from Albert Einstein. So, would you say that imagination is a necessary quality for a human being?
Well, when you ask many a person what imagination is spiritually, you find many will be at loss. Imagination, the way one may talk about it, has to do with that communication, those possibilities which has been brought forth from human intuition, which are being tried, or which the intellect tried to make earthly. It has sensed something, but it's not very clear. And in that sense, those thoughts, which thoughts is not peculiar to one person, but we have a variety of thoughts, which one person has now condensed within itself and is trying to make earthly. Those ones one may refer to as imagination. That only entails when one is open to those fine radiations that assail the human spirit, which are then transformed and pushed forward to the frontal brain to make earthly. That is what maybe Mr. Einstein meant. However, in striving to make this, logic is the glue which ties one from one point to the other. It means that there must be consistency. It does not mean that anything is possible. That has never been. Anything is not possible. Only those things which are called through the laws, through which things came into existence, only those things are possible. So logic has to be brought in. What you then find is that on the one hand, you have some imagination. On the other hand, you have logic. They have to work together in order to make that which is of benefit here on earth. Otherwise, in many scenarios, you have imagination running riot, where it says anything is possible. So, you have scenarios where it was said, all of a sudden, because anything is possible, all right, and because you have faith, you can now just grow wings in an instant. And then you start flying everywhere. You don't need planes anymore. All of a sudden, you can decide to leave your physical body, or you can perish. Because anything is possible. At the same time, you come back to the physical body. All of a sudden, you can nail the physical body, do whatever you like, allow cancer to ravage your body. All of a sudden, because anything is possible, you just wish it and everything is back to normal. All of a sudden, you can do all sorts of impossibilities. That has never been and will never be. There are rules, there are laws which govern processes. Those laws themselves, they never change. So it's time for man to examine, to make available for itself these laws. And that is why we have this discussion, and that is why we have the walk in the light of truth, the grail message. In there, many will find that which they seek spiritually. And should they be bold enough to take the steps to grasp or understand, they will find.
Thank you, Gregory, for your answer there. Dear listeners, as Gregory mentioned there, we really do recommend that you do pick up a copy of the Grail message, or you can go to this website if you would like to get a copy, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And if you want to get more information, of course, you can also see it on that website. Dear listeners, you're listening to the Spiritual Discussion Program. The topic for discussion tonight is ideal human beings. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. Now, Gregory, in the UK, the big news at the moment, apart from Brexit, is the Conservative leadership contest, and basically the whoever is going to win that is going to be the next prime minister. And we are talking about ideal human beings. And you may be aware, there have been some incidents and things happening, and people are asking many questions of a leader. Let's say, what is a good leader? Let's say, and everybody has as we know, a private life and a personal life, and obviously the press seems to be very keen on finding out about the private life. And so what I want to ask you is, should somebody who is representing a country or in a big public leadership role, should they I don't know if it's possible to have a completely clean private life, because probably in today's world that is almost impossible. So should people be allowed to know about people's private life, especially this is in this case is about even the current happening, not even the past. Should there be, or should they just focus only on the role they're going to play, in the public role they're going to play, and only that ability that they have to do that public role?
One may only discuss that which is spiritually beneficial, and that's what it means to be a leader. A leader needs to know how to follow his or her intuition. So a leader must be a follower of the intuition that has sailed him or her. Those intuitions must be to the benefit of those who look up to the one who calls himself or who puts himself forward as a leader. Those intuitions are such that whoever looks up to such a person will find those abilities that he or she seeks, and therefore has confidence. If those who put themselves forward lack these innate abilities to follow their intuition and not just talk irrationally, if they really know how to listen to their intuition, not just seeking for power for the sake of power, then by their activities they will exhibit those qualities which will uplift a nation. Else, like Nero, the nation will sink.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I mean, I know this is a spiritual program and not a political program. Obviously, the question I ask is involving political activity, and the people who are running for leadership in this case are wanting to have power, obviously, and to run the country here. And so, how can I say, they're sometimes motivated to get the popular vote, because this is called, in UK we have a democracy, and obviously, or in this case, is a Conservative party leader, so he needs to win the vote of his party membership, and so he wants to say things what pleases his membership, so he can get the majority for himself. So, but you have mentioned about using the intuition, and then maybe, again, we are not going to name anybody, but maybe if the person is, let's say, honestly following his intuition, maybe he might think, oh, if I do that, I will not win this vote. He might lose that vote, and then will not become the leader. So, is that, let's say, is that what they should do? Let's say, is that what, if they, because as I say, they want to have a position, and they're thinking, how do I get into that position if I don't win the popular, if I get the most people to vote for me?
It is not one's duty to say this or that about a particular party or a particular person. What one says very clearly is by their activities we shall know them. If someone needs, or as many will say, needs to falsify events, needs to lie, needs to do all sort of outrageous things because they want to satisfy political, ambitions, then you can now imagine what then happens. Look at the time of Hitler. Look at the case of Nero. Let those who have ears use their ears to listen. Let those who have their intuition perceive deeply. Must someone be a ruler? Must he be a leader when it lacks those innate qualities that a leader should have, the empathy which a leader should have? Many now seek to go to the highest office. The highest office calls for the greatest responsibility on the shoulders of those who wish to be in that office. If at this time many are deceiving, feel of deception and lying in order to get there, what does that already tell you? It already means that they lack those innate abilities which they claim to have. Because if they had it, they would always speak the truth, not deception. By their actions, we shall know them.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I've just received a question from a listener. They're saying, who is the judge of the ideal and should be perfect? Who is the judge of the ideal and should it be perfect?
Very simply, the laws of creation through which the human spirit, came into existence had already placed limitations, has already placed some ideals within the human spirit. Even as an unconscious spirit gem, as it develops to become conscious and self-conscious of its innate abilities, in that process is able to open up and see that which it must do. Therefore, it is these same laws that judge, in quotes, that personality that is striving towards the ideal. It is not difficult to know those who strive towards the ideal because their activities are such that it's of benefit to all rather than of benefit to a few who form a cabal.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Just thinking about some other questions, what I can ask you now. Let's see. You've mentioned, Gregory, about the laws and the natural laws or the laws of creation that we must adhere to if we're going to become ideal. And so do we also, you also mentioned the intuition there, which is, let's say, the voice of our spirit to sort of guide us. So is there any other knowledge that we also need to have to become ideal? What else is there anything more that we also need? So
Yes.
Please tell
The
us.
complete knowledge of the laws of creation, which through the work in the light of truth, each one can become aware of these laws and apply it to himself or herself and strives to be ideal. That, one can see very clearly, is well explained, is well indicated, such that the walk in the light of truth is like a map which shows the structures in creation, which shows the objects in creation, which tells you of the processings in creation, which tells you of all the movements in creation. That is what the spirit needs to know in order to get back home as a self-conscious human spirit, self-conscious of itself, of its responsibilities.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Just going back to the question of leadership, or in fact it can apply to every human being really, should an ideal human being always stick to his or her principles, or must they adapt to the needs of the circumstances and the surroundings?
If the principles are in accordance with the laws of creation, yes. However, many say to be pragmatic, you look at the maturity of the people and you give a little in moving forward. That only presupposes that you are more matured than the people you wish to lead. But nowadays, that is not the case. Many have committed atrocities and only granted an opportunity to make amends in this particular earth life. And what happens? They want to apply the same tricks they had done in the past. Let the human spirit listen to his or her intuition and strive to ennoble that in its surroundings, be it human spirit, be it the environment, mention it.
Thank you for that. Gregory, there's something I would like to read for the listeners from the Grail message, from the lecture Ideal Human Beings. I think I will it's just a couple of paragraphs, so I feel that it would be appropriate. So this is from the Grail message listeners. There's a lecture called Ideal Human Beings, and I'm reading a couple of paragraphs from there. It is man's duty on earth to set himself the highest attainable goal and to strive for this goal with all the powers at his disposal. But as a human being, this excludes from the beginning that, like an animal, he should merely trouble himself with food and drink, as unfortunately many men do, or let himself be goaded by the intellect into striving only for worldly greatness or fame, without keeping in view as the main purpose the general welfare and advancement of mankind. All such people have less value on earth than the animals, because an animal is always completely and unaffectedly what it should be, even if it only serves to keep other creatures on the alert so that no hampering indolence sets in, which might lead to decline and disintegration. For movement is a vital condition of life in creation. Be on the alert. The person who really strives towards the ideal can be recognized by his efforts to uplift existing things on earth, not in the intellectual sense of increasing power and position, but towards ennobling them. All his ideas will possess the ability of being realized on earth and will bring gain to the individual as well as to mankind in general. But those who only wish to be ideal, only wish to be ideal, wallow in notions that cannot possibly be put into practice in a sound earth life. On the contrary, these ideas merely divert them and draw them into a dream world, with the harmful result that man neglects to make use of the present time for maturing of his spirit, which every man should cultivate and develop through the experiences of the movement. I think I'm going to stop there. So Gregory, what you have, I know you mentioned it actually already, so I think it was highlighted here in these couple of paragraphs, what you said. Did you want to say anything further, Gregory, about this?
Not really. I thought it's a good idea to have read that particular passage out.
Thank you. I've got another, I think it's a question from a listener. Let me just pick it up. Okay. It says, I think it's a follow-on from what you said earlier, Gregory. It says, that which tends towards the ideal can be positive or negative, pleasant or unpleasant. Please clarify. I must admit, I'm not quite following what he's saying. So I'll just read it again. That which tends towards the ideal can be positive or negative, pleasant or unpleasant. Please clarify.
I'm surprised to hear that that which tends towards the ideal can be negative. I myself do not understand that.
Yes.
Because that which tends towards the ideal strives towards the ideal, and it strives to ennoble all that which lies in its path. So ennoblement is positive. It is not negative.
And also it would be pleasant rather than unpleasant. So I must admit,
it should be pleasant for those who are along the same direction, whereas those who it will be unpleasant with those who are indolent, because what then happens is some envy comes up when they see that a person is striving towards the ideal and it requires so much effort which they themselves, the indolent ones, are unable to master.
And Gregory, I know I'm sort of going toing and froing here. Again, this question about leadership, I know it's about the conservative one, but it can apply in other circumstances as well. So, what I'm basically, the question I want to ask is, should every question be answered or not? So, you see that with politicians, they're always being asked questions, and then sometimes they answer and sometimes they don't answer. So, I know in this case there's an issue of a private life of somebody, and maybe they don't want to answer it for many reasons, which could be very good reasons, because I mean the main reason could be this private and they don't want to share their private life, which is fair enough. But let's, could you answer that first, Gregory? Just, should people talk about their private life, in the public, if the question is asked in the public, or it should not be, that should not be responded to? And then in the next, if you look at that first, and then I've got the other question to follow from that.
Every question is a quest. In a quest, it is assumed that the questioner has the innate ability to grasp that which has been put forward. If the questioner hasn't got that innate abilities, as in a quest, for when you are in a quest, you are searching for something which you wish to know. If that which you wish to know is noble, because you want clarity about those who come forward, who wish to reflect the welfare of all, not the welfare of a few. If that is the case, then the one asking the question deserves the right answer. For each personality wish to assert for himself whether the one who is putting himself or herself forward has the right qualities that he or she professes to have. In that case, there is the need to examine, hence the questions. And one who has come to the public has already exposed himself or herself in putting themselves forward for examination. For if that person didn't come publicly for examination, those questions will not apply to it. Therefore, he or she is bound to provide correctly, personal or impersonal, the right answers, because he or she is seeking a mandate. Therefore, he or she must come clean with all that he or she needs to do. That means he or she must not lie to the people. He or she must not deceive the people. For if you want a mandate to be granted to you,
Yeah, just take your time, Gregory. I'll just say, dear listeners,
sorry.
You're back? You're back now?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
good. Yeah.
If you want a mandate to be granted to you, then it is right that the people who will grant the mandate ask you, seek in you, to find out if really you are capable of it. Else, the welfare of a whole nation is placed on your shoulders, and because of the past boasting, when the pressures of office come, there is a collapse. So it is right that people ask questions, because these same people didn't ask you to come be their leader. You yourself put yourself forward, and therefore they need to be convinced. As with everything, everything must be examined anew in order to convince themselves that yes, they are confident that when the need arises, you are capable of it, and not to collapse at the first shot of battle, which many a person is likely to enter into. Therefore, all questions thrown at you must be answered in the most objective way, not in a cynical or hiding behind many things. One has put himself forward for questions because now people want the confidence that they can trust you with their sleep.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for really giving a clear answer, and also, expand, really, I don't want to use that extensive, but really covering in an all-rounded way, so that people can really see how important these questions are. So thank you for that. Gregory, in our discussions today, I've noticed the things I've, let's say, some things I've looked in the research and we discussed it, and we noted that things were not complete in information. People are making, let's say, some statements or sayings, and it's unless it's in the right context, it will not actually work. You know, like maybe Einstein saying imagination is like it allows you to create realms and so on, and logic gives you the A to Z. But again, on its own, that is not enough. You need to have the whole context, a whole picture, and so I'm grateful for what you said there. Now, in the world of today, there are many, let's say, movements and leaders of such movements, like say Save the Earth and environment, or other campaigns where people are suffering whatever illnesses or something, effects of war and so on and so on. And each one has their own ideas of how they want to promote their goals, let's say. Now, and again, we've already talked about good intentions, but again, good intention by itself is not enough. So how can those who are leading such movements, realize or be even aware that what they're saying or what they're leading is going to work, because it's only, in a way, most of these things are not really been tested in the world. These are ideas that somebody's having, and they feel this is the way forward. And so, is there a way to assess these people or ideas, that movements that are coming forward, I mean, what we know is, for example, in the political world, the one who gets, in the democracies at least, the one who wins the most votes or seems to be more convincing seems to win the day. But then you still see when they actually do they put their policy into place, still we don't get the result. Let's say a successful result or positive result. It seems still it's just they maybe had a different direction, but it doesn't bring success. So how can we assess, you can say, when people come up with all their ideas, that it's going to work or not?
That is a question which must be examined very carefully. How do we know that the ideas which others have put forward will work or not? Ideas which do not have a firm foundation based on the laws through which existence came into being or came into reality, those ideas will only last for a very short period, and before long they will vanish, because those ideas have been based not on reality, but on what one refers to as fables, all right? Not realistic in the sense that they have not been thought through, they have not been reflected through to ensure that that which they are putting forward will last long. There is a passage in the work In the Light of Truth in which it mentioned where people have some beautiful ideas. These ideas are perfect, in quotes, and they are built in a place which looks ideal. It is trim. However, when they now bring those ideas to a firm ground, which ground is uneven, you find those sort of ideas will not work. Because this firm ground consists of human beings who are maturing at different times. Because we don't have a uniform maturity of man on earth, bringing such an idea is not going to be helpful or fruitful. But the key thing I want to draw here is whatever idea one has to check whether it's in harmony with the laws through which everything has come into existence. These laws themselves have been talked about a lot, but it's only in the walk in the light of truth that we have had these laws explained, put forward in the simplest possible. Above all, he says, examine them. Any idea that comes forward needs first to be examined. Examine for self-consistency. Examine for consistency and harmony with the laws of creation. Only that which is consistent with the laws of creation will have a lasting value, will be of lasting value. All else are only temporal. For where there are storms, which storms have been generated by men themselves or by other processes in nature, those ideas will crumble because they cannot stand the test of time. So first, everything must be examined anew, again and again. Above all, the best advice one may give is make available for yourself the work in the light of truth. Examine it. That does not mean you should take everything it has said for granted. Never take anything for granted. Examine it again and again with all the abilities, not only physical abilities, but the abilities of one's intuition. One should use that to examine the work in the light of truth. Only then can you draw a good conclusion. For only what man has examined intuitively in all its varieties will become of benefit to it. Because in the examination, it will come to certain conclusions and it will be convinced of many things. Conviction alone is what supports life, because it will now see that it cannot be otherwise but the way it must be in nature. Then all unnecessary, exaggerated pressures will vanish because he or she understands creation as it's supposed to be understood, not as imagined.
Thank you so much, Gregory. I've got one more question from a listener, which is like continuation of the earlier one. So I just want to carry on, and our next presenter isn't here yet. So I'll just repeat what he said before and then what he's saying now. So he said before that which tends towards the ideal can be positive or negative, pleasant or unpleasant. And he said, please clarify. And now he has added to that. Therefore, does going through hard times or unpleasant time mean that I'm not striving towards the ideal?
That is a very good question. When one is striving towards the ideal, sometimes it's like one is going up a mountain. When one is going up a mountain, it calls into question all the abilities that one has in order to climb through some crevices, to go through some passages, to get to the top of the mountain. It saps your strength. Along the line, you mature in finding ways in order to get to the peak. That does not mean that those challenges that you have means you're not going through, you are not going towards the ideal. In fact, the reverse is the case, because that person that is striving towards the ideal will encounter many obstacles, which obstacles are the confusion that he himself has allowed on his path at the earlier times. Basically, a path which has not been used for a long time is overgrown with weeds. The day you intend to follow that path, you still need to clear those weeds in order to get to the top. The process of clearing those weeds seems like a lot of exertion. Only when those weeds have been cleared will the path become clear and you can see where you're going. So on the contrary, those things which help you to exert yourself into alertness of the highest kind, not only intellectually, but spiritually, that alertness which will enable you to shine like a diamond which has been fully well polished, those experiences are helpful and necessary. It only tells you you are striving towards that which is high and noble. So this does not mean that you're not striving towards that which is ideal. It only means you are removing the cobwebs that had, surrounded you for quite some time. And it's only natural you remove this so that your eyes become clear.
Thank you so much, Gregory. We've come to the end of our show. Thank you, listeners, for joining us tonight. Hope you found it interesting and thought-provoking. And, well, I'm sure Gregory is going to join me to urge you to please do pick up the Grail message and examine it. Gregory, anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Well, we wish all the listeners all the strength in their experiencing and in the effort sometimes to examine the work.
Thank you for that. Dear listeners, we'll be back again next Tuesday as usual, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Bless Radio with another topic. We'll find out that next week. And yes, if you want to pick up the Grail message, please, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. That's, I'll spell it, www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. I wish you a great week and God bless. So hopefully Brother Sayom's on his way, so you can join him on his show very soon. All the best, everybody. Have a great week.